Dr. Gregory House often played with his team and pit them against each other, but House Season 6 revealed who his real favorite was. House remains one of the most compelling medical drama shows on TV. Thanks to the clever premise which lays the foundation for House and his team to be the special team of doctors that people approach when illnesses are especially unusual or seemingly impossible to diagnose, it made perfect sense for the team to deal with the most intense and mysterious cases on a weekly basis. However, as an unkai adaptation of the Sherlock Holmes stories, House was also a difficult man to work with, whose brilliance frequently, but not always, justified working with him. He recruited a small, but highly skilled team to work with him, and more often than not, he would butt heads with them. But, House also appears to have a special place in his heart for one of his teammates in particular, and the show clearly illustrates his loyalty and respect for this doctor in House Season 6. House Season 6 confirmed Chase was always going to be House's favorite. Chase made some pretty intense choices, and House respected it. House Season 6 was a point where big changes came into the show. For the first time, House was the only member of the original cast who appeared in each episode, as his team and others in the hospital had their own projects and pursuits that kept them occupied outside of House's diagnostics team. In that muddle, House was focused on working with his less experienced team, while previous team members like Chase and Foreman handled their own cases independently, while occasionally seeking out the advice and experience of their old boss. It was in these conditions that Chase and Foreman were assigned to take care of a patient who was a well-known dictator in an African country. This man was responsible for unspeakable war crimes, cruelty, and death throughout the land that he ruled over. And potentially, thanks to House's radical approach, Chase chose to go with his gut and his morals over the responsibility to provide care for this man. Chase swapped the files for the dictator with another patient, which meant he did not get the treatment he was supposed to, and it ultimately led to his death. House was willing to do anything to keep Chase around, even destroying his marriage. House proved how much he needed Chase. Of course, this put Chase into a challenging situation, both because he had to undergo investigative procedures from the hospital, and beyond that, he wrestled with his own guilt and shame. Chase felt the burden of his decisions intensely, and it affected his life at home with his partner, Dr. Cameron. However, House went out of his way to meddle in Chase's relationship in an effort to make sure he would remain in his job, near House. This action was certainly selfish and petulant, but it does make it more clear that House has a lot of respect for, and a desire to protect, his friend Robert Chase. For any other doctor on his team, House was usually ready to fire and kick them out at the drop of a hat. Yes, he did not like things to change, and he struggled with some of his staff leaving before, but he wanted to keep Chase close at whatever cost. House Season 6 takes a closer look at this developing relationship than any other season, and it comes after the pair have already had many ups and downs. Earlier in the show, House had even tried to fire Chase, but by Season 6, he recognized something in Chase that he clearly saw deeper value in. House and Chase's relationship was one of the show's most fascinating. There was a lot of growth and symmetry between Chase and House. Early on, it could have been easy to think that House despised Chase. With Cameron, he had a slight attraction, but he also respected her ability to stand up for herself. With Foreman, he butted heads frequently, but there was no doubt he was a brilliant and talented doctor that likely needed the least guidance from House as a mentor. For Chase, he was incredibly intelligent, but also willing to learn. He was ready to take hard knocks, and always get back up, rather than simply get defensive or confrontational. But that didn't mean he couldn't hold his own. It took Chase a little time to find his voice and become confident enough to push back with House, but when he did get to that point, it came with years of working closely together, learning and becoming like his mentor, for better and for worse. Chase understood more about House than any of his other colleagues, and he didn't run away. Chase stayed when everyone else left, and he continued to have a healthy respect for his mentor, while also learning where he needed to draw the line to be comfortable and happy with his own choices, but that took time. It only made sense for Chase to take over the department after House's death. Robert Chase is an ideal candidate to replace Chase. Not only was Chase the most experienced member of House's team, but in many ways, he was a true successor to House. Chase did not come to work for House with the desire of making money or earning notoriety. His father had money and notoriety, and it made him distant and cold. He also didn't join purely to prove himself, like Cameron or 13, he had a genuine and deep interest in the type of work that House was doing, and he wanted to solve the puzzles. This made him an ideal replacement to take over the diagnostics department. While Foreman had bigger ambitions, and a chip on his shoulder, he wanted to grind off by earning the top spot. Chase had a singular goal to become the best at what he was doing. Chase understood House's faults, but he also understood that, despite the negatives and the rough exterior that House presented to the world, he was a genius who had a heart, but he only used it when it would help to treat patients or solve a case. Chase followed in the footsteps of his mentor, and he learned to control his emotions in a way that delivers the biggest net positive in House, just like his mentor.